This video is about the VCE, the structure of the VCE, how the VCE is scored, what you need to do to get a VCE, and also some school rules that you need to bear in mind. Okay. So, VCE stands for Victorian Certificate of Education. It is designed to be a challenging course. Not every student in the state will attempt a VCE. And you have to take in that one study from the English group and up to 5 others that you choose. If you do that and you do it successfully, then you'll get a VCE. If you include within your 5 others a language and what we call a difficult maths, then you can also get a second certificate, which is a VCE Baccalaureate. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. So, the VCE is divided into units. Sequential units, 1 through to 4. They're designed so that Unit 1-2 is taken in Year 11 and Unit 3-4 in Year 12. And to get a VCE, you've got to complete at least 16 units, and at least 4 of them have got to be Unit 3-4 sequences. Okay. At Suzanne Corrie, you've got to take 6 subjects in Year 11, and most of you would expect would be taking 5 in Year 12. There's only one compulsory subject. You've got to take one of the English group. So it could be English, English is additional language, literature, or English language. You've got to choose one of them. Now, when you're onto your VCE, you'll get a whole load of things that you'll be talking about. Your study score, the VCE certificate, the baccalaureate, the ATAR. Okay? So, if at the end of Year 12, you've passed at least 16 units, and that includes 3 units from the English group, and 3 more Unit 3-4 sequences, so 3 and 4 together, then we will give you a certificate. Even the post, actually, but you'll get one. If in addition to that, you sit some exams, you'll get a study score, which tells you how well you did in each subject. If as part of your VCE, you do a language and some maths, and you do well in English, then you will get a VCE certificate and a VCE Baccalaureate certificate. And if you get study scores for all of your subjects, including your English, then you can also get an ATAR. And that's the number that gets you into university. Okay, but all these things are interlinked, but are separate. So, first thing we always tell VCAR is whether you passed a unit or not. So for Unit 1-4, we will tell VCAR whether you got an S for satisfactory or an N for not satisfactory. To get an S, you have to produce work that's your own. You have to meet the outcomes. So in each study design for each subject, it says this is what students have to show they can do. You've got to hand in your work on time, and you've got to observe VCAR rules and school rules. And yes, the VCAR do actually specify you've got to observe the school rules, and that includes attendance rules. Okay? If you do that, then we will tell them, yes, they passed that unit. Okay? And you need to pass 16 units, including 3 Unit 3-4s, in order to get a VCE. Okay? So 16 units, including 3 English, including 3 Unit 3-4s. You don't have to get a particular mark in those. You've just got to get an S. And the marks that you get are not forwarded to VCAR for Unit 1-2 at all. Okay? For Unit 3-4 they are. Okay? So Unit 1-2 studies are important because they build the skills that you need, and of course you need them to get up to 16 units, but we're not going to tell VCAR how well you did on them. We'll tell your parents and you in your reports, but it doesn't go to VCAR. For Unit 3-4, in addition to telling them whether you got an S or an N, you will also do SACs. Now those SACs are coursework which is part of your study score. Okay? And your study score says how well you did. Okay? It combines with exams for all subjects at the end of the year. Everyone's got a written exam. Some subjects also have oral or performance exams. Now, the study score is a mark out of 50. It's a ranking. It's not a linear scale. So the mean for all subjects is 30, but the further away you get from 30, the harder it is to get. So only 2% of students in the state doing that subject would get a study score over 45. But 9% would get a study score over 40, and 26% would get a study score over 35, okay? And 53% of them will get a score on or above 30, okay? It is based on a standard deviation, and your mean is 30, as a normal distribution, mean of 30, standard deviation of 7. So those of you who enjoy maths and working out these kind of things can work out the exact percentages that would get each one. Though why you would want to do that, I do not know, because it won't actually help you achieve those scores. Okay, so to calculate your study score, the VCAR combines the scores for your graded assessments that you do in school and your exam. Each one's got a specific percentage, and they compare that to how well all the other students who did that study did in those particular assessments. And then they turn it into a score out of 50. If you've got your study score, okay, then they will get combined to make an ATAR. That's the score that your university's in look at. And they will look at up to 6 results, but they don't all have to be from the same year. They will include in that calculation your score in the best one of your English study. So if you do more than one English study, they'll include the best one. If you just do one, then they'll include that. The next 3 studies in which you got the highest scores, and those together make your primary 4. So they add up your study scores for all of those. Plus, they then add, if you did a 5th or a 6th subject, they will add 10% of the study scores for those. So that's a tiny little increment. Once they've done them, that will make your aggregate. They will then put the aggregate of all students in the state who are getting a VCE certificate then in a ranking, and then they'll say, essentially, how many students did you beat, or what percentage of them did you beat? So if you got an ATAR of 50, then that means you did better than 50% of the state. If you got an ATAR of 99.95, which is the highest you can get, then that means you did better than 99.95% of the state. Now, some of you, in addition to getting a VCE certificate, might be aiming to get a VCE Baccalaureate. To do that, you need to get 30 or above in the English group study, or if you're doing EAL, then it has to be 35 or above. You've also got to pass a hard maths, which is either methods or specialist in their definition. And you've got to pass a language other than English. You don't have to get a particular score in these, you just got to pass them. Now, it's not going to give you bonus ATAR points, so it's not going to affect your entry into university, but it's likely to affect how readily you'll get scholarships, because they'll see that you've got a diverse range of harder subjects and therefore be more likely to award it to you. And it's certainly likely to affect how your job applications in later life, because it shows that you are not just specialising in one area, but you've got a wide breadth of skills and knowledge. So that's the VCE. There are a few school regulations that you've got to follow when you're choosing your subjects. The first is for your English group studies. So whilst there are a range of them, we expect you all to take mainstream English. And if you want to take a second English, then take language or literature. We don't advise you to take just language or just literature. Okay? The reason is because they two things. Firstly, they require skills which are very different from what you've been doing in year 9 and 10 English. But more importantly, they have got much smaller cohorts. And because the cohorts are so much smaller, that means it's really hard to get a high study score in them. And think back to your ATAR calculation, if you just do one English, that's going to be counted in your primary 4, even if it's not very good. So even if you didn't do very well compared to the rest of the state on that, then that's a lot harder. Okay, so to be in the top half of 30,000 English students is relatively easy. To be in the top half of 2,000 English language students is an awful lot harder, particularly because those are the students who are most likely to be really interested in and dedicated to their English studies. So if you wanted to do that as your only study, there's an application form that you've got to submit with your subject selection form. Okay? And in that, you've got to make sure you tell us why you want to do it, which shows that you've reflected on your English abilities, as well as the study design for the subject you want to take. If you want to take one of them, you've got to choose it from Unit 1, because we don't let anyone change into it for Unit 2 or for Unit 3-4. If you're eligible, you could take EAL instead of English, and that's fine, and it runs from Unit 1 to 4. Okay? To be eligible to take it at Unit 1-2, then you've got to have spent less than 6 years of your life in an English-speaking country by January of next year. Okay? For most people, that means that you've got to have arrived here later than January 2011. But if you were in an English-speaking country earlier in your life, and then moved out and then moved back, you've got to add up all of that time together. Okay? And it's got to be less than 6 years. If it's 6 years and 1 day, then you're not eligible. Sorry. Mathematics group studies, we've also put some restrictions on. So there are 3 levels of maths. General Maths Unit 1-2, which will lead you to Further Maths Unit 3-4, Methods Unit 1-4, and Spec Unit 1-4. You're only allowed to take a maximum of 2 of those in your VCE program. You can't take all 3 maths. Even if you do one of them in Year 11 and the other 2 in Year 12, you can't do them. Okay? You've got to ensure there's a breadth to your studies. Apologies for the bell. It may, okay, if you want to take specialist maths, you've got to also take mathematical methods. And maths methods and specialist maths, you've got to do the whole Unit 1-4 sequence. Further maths, you can take Unit 3-4 without doing a 1-1-2. So it might be that you want to take Further Maths Unit 3-4 in Year 11, therefore you haven't done the 1-2. Or it might be that potentially you did Methods Unit 1-2, found it quite hard, and then changed to Further Maths Unit 3-4, and that's also okay. But what you can't do is take General Maths 1-2 and then change and take Methods 3-4. That would not be possible. Okay. In general, though, for most subjects it is possible to take the 3-4 without Unit 1-2. If you look in your handbook, there are ticks by some of them that say yes for early entry. Those are the ones that we've identified as being non-sequential, which means it's possible to do it. Okay? You'll also have your approval letter, which you'll get in the post next week. That will tell you if you're allowed to take one and what subject areas you can do it in. So if you're said yes to the sciences, you could take biology or psychology, for instance. It is going to be more difficult than taking Unit 1-2. It's not going to be an impossible leap, but it is going to be more difficult. And you are going to be in a class with people who have taken Unit 1-2, so just be aware of that when you're making those choices. It's not advisable to take something that you absolutely desperately need to ace in order to get into university. Yeah? It's better to leave those ones until Year 12 when you're more experienced, you've got used to taking exams, and you're just in general a more rounded student who's used to doing exams and the like.